this is practice, and I think I'll just read this whole thing at 180, and then we'll do some more speed pushing with other material. This is a Reader's Digest article called "The Killer Next Door" that was originally a story on The Moth Presents. Is that what it was called? The Moth Presents, which is a radio show. For the record, I managed a hotel in Santa Monica for about 7 years, as well as the apartment building where I lived, which was across the street. Super easy commute. It's particularly great when you live in LA. You meet a lot of interesting people when you manage a building. For example, there was a retired couple who lived next to the unit, or in the unit next to mine, the Gascos. The first time I met the husband, I was in my apartment playing guitar and trying to write a song. There's a knock on the door, and I open it to find a man in his 70s holding a black case. He tells me that he heard me playing music and he liked it, which was good, and he thought I could use this black Stetson cowboy hat. Really nice gesture. I thank him, and he says his name is Charlie. I need light. There we go. Sorry for the disruption there. So fast forward 4 years, and I'm taking a nap on my couch. I'd been working for 2 weeks straight, no days off, on call every night. But this particular Wednesday, I was taking off work early, and I was going to see this band, My Morning Jacket, in Hollywood. I was meeting a friend, all planned out. At 2 p.m., the phone rings, and it's my coworker calling from the office with the FBI. Before I know it, I'm on the phone with an FBI agent, and he says, I need to talk to you about a tenant in your apartment building. I'm on my couch, so I say, can we do this tomorrow? He says, no. Where are you? Come here now. So I get to my office, and I take a seat, and there's a large man wearing a dark t-shirt and jeans. He closes the door and throws a manila folder down on the desk. He opens it and points to a sheet of paper. Across the top is wanted, and underneath is a photo of a man and a woman with the names Catherine Grieg and James J. Whitey Bulger. The officer asks if these people live in the apartment next to mine. At first glance, I know the woman is my neighbor, Carol Gasco. Yes, I know these guys. They are my neighbors. And while I've never heard the name Catherine Grieg, the name Whitey Bulger is very familiar. I had heard it many times when I was at Boston University, but I didn't really know anything about him. He was a Jimmy Hoffa type guy to me, like, oh, this guy's missing. He's never going to be found. It was almost like a joke. So I'm standing there, and the FBI agent says, what do you think? I say, what does my face tell you? He says, I need percentages. I say 99.5, 100%. So he gets on his cell phone, and while this is happening, it feels like I'm in a movie after an explosion where the sound just disappears and you're trying to process something that you're not familiar with. You don't know what's going on, and you don't know what's about to happen. This is an old man who bought me a bike light one time because he was worried about me riding my bike at night without one. And now I'm discovering he's a notorious fugitive. Another agent, this one in a Hawaiian shirt, quickly appears. The agent in the dark t-shirt says, we need the spare keys to his apartment. I don't want to have to bust the door down. I say, okay, here are the keys. The agent in the Hawaiian shirt leaves, and then the other agent says, look, this guy's pretty high on the most wanted list. We could use your help apprehending him. My first response is, I just gave you the keys to his apartment and told you he lives there, so I'm not really sure what else I can do. He says, well, we can't just go to his apartment. We have to make sure he's in there. If it's just her, it doesn't really work for us. So why don't you go knock on the door and see if he's there? In the previous months, Carol had been telling people in the building, Charlie has dementia. He has heart problems. They'd put notes on their door during the day that said, don't knock on the door. I knew from talking to him over the years that he slept during the day. I explained this to the agent, and without skipping a beat, he says, well, what are you doing tonight? I say, I'm going to a concert. He says, you might want to cancel those plans. So I call my buddy and tell him, look, I don't think I'm going to make the show tonight, and I can't tell you why. As the original shock is dissipating, I realize I'm going to be with these guys until they have Charlie in cuffs. Then things really kick in. One agent places himself at a window that has a good view of the Gasco's balcony across the street. The other agent wants to go over to my apartment. I tell him to go through an alley and some side streets so he doesn't walk in front of the apartment building in clear view of Charlie and Carol. I walk through the front entrance and let him in from the back. The FBI agent says, they just closed their blinds. Did you tip them off? I've been with you the whole time. No, of course not. We get to my apartment and I draw him a floor plan of the Gasco's place. He's throwing ideas around about how to get this guy out of his apartment. My living room wall shares a wall with Charlie's bedroom, so I'm like, you know, this guy can hear everything we're saying. Like, he's repeated conversations I've had at night with my friends, asking me why we don't curse or fight as much as he and his friends did in his younger days. We go into my bedroom and he comes up with an idea. We're going to break into his storage locker in the garage. We go down to the garage and the FBI agent goes to get his car. He has some bolt cutters in there. I'm suddenly pumped up. I'm involved in something. It's like a movie. I'm having fun almost at this point. The adrenaline is helping me forget about my relationship with these people over the years. I mean, this is the same man who bought me a Christmas present every year for the 4 years I've lived there. Once the lock is broken, we go back to my apartment and the agent's telling me, okay, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to go down. We're going to get everything set. I'm going to call you and you knock on this door and bring him down. And I'm like, no, I'm going to go across to my office to call him and I'm going to tell him to meet me there. Then you guys take care of your business. I'm in my office and I'm thinking about this guy, my neighbor who looked after an old woman on the first floor, who one year when I didn't write a thank you note for a Christmas present he gave me a box of stationery. I'm thinking, what did this guy actually do? So I go to Wikipedia and I'm reading about murders and extortion and gambling. I get to the bottom. And in one of his last public sightings with one of his mafia buddies, there's a quote from him. When I go down, I'm going out with guns blazing. I start to rethink my involvement in the day's events. Conveniently, my phone rings and it's the FBI and they say, make the call. I start to waver. Look, man, I just read something about this guy and I don't know about this. He says, no, he'll never know. Which is obviously not true, but I am this close to going to my concert, so I say, all right, I'll make the call. I call the Gasco's and there is no answer. I am relieved. I am so happy that they didn't answer the phone. I call the agent back and I say, hey man, sorry, they didn't answer. Going to have to do something else. He says, are you sure you don't want to knock on the door? And I'm like, look, man, curtains closed, guns blazing. What if he comes to the door with a gun? He says, just be like, hey, man, what's going on? I'm thinking to myself, he will shoot me before I finish that one statement. I tell him I'm not going to do that. But while this is going on, Carol calls back. And so I get on the phone and I explain to her that the storage unit's been broken into. Either I can call the police or Charlie can meet me in the garage and we'll look at it. So she discusses this with him and she says, he'll be down in 5 minutes. All right, great. I hang up and call the FBI. He's on his way. Do your thing. Then I walk outside, and Carol walks out on her balcony, which is directly across the street. She looks at me, and then she quickly looks down to the garage, and then she looks back at me. I don't know if she knows, but she looks worried. She walks back in, and then I get a call from the FBI, and they say, "We got him. Go to your concert." So I go back across the street to my apartment to change clothes, and the adrenaline, the rush just hits me. I go downstairs, and as soon as I open the door to the garage, it's like a slow motion shot. There are 2 SUVs and a half dozen FBI agents, and my neighbor, Charlie Gasco, is standing there in cuffs, surrounded by agents, laughing and telling stories. He almost looks relieved. I see Carol standing a few feet away, also in cuffs, and the magnitude of everything that has happened starts to sink in. She looks at me and she says, "Hi, Josh," and I can't speak. I just meekly wave and walk to my car and get on the highway and call my brother and say, "You'll never guess what happened to me today." "What?" "I helped the FBI arrest the most wanted man in the country." So a couple of months later, my family's a little worried about me, and my friends are taking bets on how much longer I have to live. I get home one day, and there's a letter in the mail from the Plymouth Correctional Facility. I open it, and I see the same familiar cursive writing and the same shoot-the-breeze dialogue tone that I know from 4 years living next to Charlie Gasco. But in this letter, he's introducing himself as Jim Bolger. And so I write him back and say, "Look, I had something to do with the day of the arrest, and my family's a little worried. So, just a little note of everything's good would be nice." He writes back and says, "Look, they had me with or without your help. No worries." So that made my mom feel better, definitely. New neighbors eventually moved in, and they seemed like nice people. But what do I know? So there's a little epilogue here. After his capture, Bolger was tried in Boston and convicted on charges related to 11 murders and other crimes. He was sentenced to 2 life terms and is currently in federal prison in Florida. This is more warm-up. This will be, this is from the Supreme Court of the United States. This is a guide for counsel in cases to be argued before this court. So we read a little bit of this previously, and so we'll continue. At least I think, yeah, might have been, oh, it was last quarter actually. So, but here's some more. This is section C, seating for counsel. I'll read this at about 190 or so. For the record. After you have met with the clerk and received your identification card, you should report immediately to the courtroom officials inside the railings to be assigned an appropriate seat. You should advise the courtroom officials if you are scheduled to move the admission of an attorney. 4 seats are available at each counsel table in the courtroom. When only one counsel is to argue a case per side, the arguing counsel and 3 co-counsel will be accommodated at the table. If divided argument has been granted and 2 counsel are to argue on the same side, the court will accommodate only 1 co-counsel per each arguing counsel at the table. The quill pens at counsel table are gifts to you, a souvenir of your having argued before the highest court in the land. Take them with you. They are handcrafted and usable as writing quills. It is appropriate for a co-counsel to occupy the arguing counsel's chair when the latter is presenting argument. Except in extraordinary circumstances, co-counsel do not pass notes to arguing counsel during argument. D, in the courtroom, order of business. Arguing counsel and their co-counsel should be settled in the courtroom and seated in their assigned seats at the counsel tables about 5 minutes before court is scheduled to open. The marshal of the court cries the court in at 10 a.m. The Chief Justice makes routine announcements, e.g. orders are released. Opinions, if any, are then released. The authoring justice will read a summary of the opinion. This takes about 5 minutes for each opinion. Motions for admission to the bar occur next. The Chief Justice will then announce that the court will hear argument in the first case for argument that day. If you are counsel for the petitioner, you should proceed promptly to the lectern. Do not wait for the Chief Justice to issue an invitation. Remain standing at the lectern and say nothing until the Chief Justice recognizes you by name. Once he has done so, you may acknowledge the court by the usual Mr. Chief Justice and may it please the court. Do not introduce yourself or co-counsel. Under the present practice, Mr. is only used in addressing the Chief Justice. The others are referred to as Justice Scalia, Justice Ginsburg, or Your Honor. Do not use the title Judge. If you are in doubt about the name of a justice who is addressing you, it is better to use Your Honor rather than mistakenly address the justice by another justice's name. E, your argument. 1, preparation. Many attorneys find it very educational to attend a courtroom session before their scheduled argument day. If you choose to do this, feel free to come by the clerk's office and introduce yourself to the clerk. The same applies to the marshal. Remember that briefs are different from oral argument. A complex issue might take up a large portion of your brief, but there might be no need to argue that issue. Merits briefs should contain a logical review of all issues in the case. Oral arguments are not designed to summarize briefs, but to present the opportunity to stress the main issues of the case that might persuade the court in your favor. It has been said that preparing for oral argument at the Supreme Court is like packing your clothes for an ocean cruise. You should lay out all the clothes you think you will need and then return half of them to the closet. When preparing for oral argument, you eliminate half of what you initially planned to cover. Your allotted time passes quickly, especially when numerous questions come from the court. Be prepared to skip over much of your planned argument and stress your strongest points. Some counsel find it useful to have a section in their notes entitled "Cut to the Chase." They refer to that section in the event that most of their time has been consumed by answering questions posed by the justices. This allows them to use the few precious minutes remaining to stress their main points. If your argument focuses on a statute, regulation, or ordinance, be sure that the law is printed in full in one of your pleadings so that you can refer the justices to it and they can be looking at it during your argument. Do not bring numerous volumes to the lectern. One notebook will suffice. Please note that a legal-sized pad does not fit on the lectern properly. Turning pages in a notebook appears more professional than flipping pages of a legal pad. Some brave counsel know their cases so well that they argue without any notes. Know the record, especially the procedural history of the case. Be prepared to answer a question like, "Why didn't you make a motion for summary judgment?" You have the opportunity to inform the justices about facts of which they are not aware. Justices frequently ask, "Is that in the record?" Be prepared to answer. It is impressive when you can respond with the volume and page where the information is located. It is also quite effective to quote from the joint appendix. Do not make assertions about issues or facts not in the record. Know your client's business. One counsel representing a large beer brewing corporation was asked the following by a justice during argument: "What is the difference between beer and ale?" The question had little to do with the issues, but the case involved the beer brewing business. Counsel gave a brief, simple, and clear answer that was understood by everyone in the courtroom. He knew the business of his client, and it showed. The justice who posed the question thanked counsel in a warm and gracious manner. For an excellent example of a counsel who was intimately familiar with her client's business, see the transcript of argument in United States versus Flores Montano, 541 U.S. 149, 2004. The case dealt with the searching of a vehicle gas tank by customs agents at an international border. Government counsel had a total grasp of why and how the agents conducted the searches and provided convincing explanations to all questions posed by the court. The following are excellent sources of information for arguing counsel. Making Your Case, The Art of Persuading Judges by Justice Antonin Scalia and Brian Garner. Chapter 14, Oral Argument, Supreme Court Practice, 9th edition by Eugene Gressman, Kenneth Geller, Stephen Shapiro, Timothy Bishop, and Edward Hartnett. And Supreme Court Appellate Advocacy, Mastering Oral Argument by David Frederick. I think we'll stop that there. The next section is talking about how long they have. This says 30 minutes. I thought it was an hour, but you know, this says 30 minutes. I was hearing something on the radio. Someone was talking about, because they're doing oral argument right now at the Supreme Court, and this person has, I guess, covered the Supreme Court, or I don't know, but she said that that oral argument is, you know, the briefs that they submit beforehand are quite lengthy. I mean, they're called briefs, but they're quite lengthy, and they explain everything, and they lay everything out, and the justices all read those, and they come to the courtroom, you know, with an idea of how they are possibly going to rule, but they have questions, and so this is what they're talking about that I just read. So they go and the attorney is making, you know, oral argument, and so, you know, but the justices have questions about different things that were in the briefs, and so they, you know, so they spend time asking all these questions, and so you have to answer the questions and then, you know, say the most important thing, you know, like this said. So I thought, yeah, it's pretty interesting, because I just heard that yesterday. So that's something, and you can go online and listen to the oral arguments. They have them online that you can listen to. You can also print them out, but I think you can actually listen to them online, and you know, so that might, again, that could be a, you know, some kind of practice. Yeah. For, you know, if there's something you're interested in, or just see what it's like. That
would be hard. Well, because how many?
It would be hard. I mean, there's, you know,
how many justices?
9, you know, justices, and so, you know, you would have to know the attorney's voice, and then, you know, and I would say, you know, put the attorney as answer, and just do it like Q&A, and any justice that asks a question, just have that be questioned. So yeah. I don't know if you want to try that. Okay, so now we'll do a jury charge, and I went up to 200 in that at the last couple minutes, and so this one we will also read at 200 and maybe a little faster, but let me pause briefly.